It's going to be a good one. I am coaching Matt.
Yes, I am the Melancholic.
And it's like a legit coaching session. 2 coaching sessions in one. So you're definitely going to want to stick around and listen
You may
to this.
discover a childhood phobia that I wasn't planning on revealing, but it comes out in this podcast. So,
hey, and when you listen to it, when you find it, type it in. Right? If you're watching this on YouTube, type it in.
Type in my childhood phobia.
Yes.
So I'd love to relive these things.
Yes.
Okay. We'll see you in there. Bye. Hey, welcome back to the Catholic Coaching Podcast. We're continuing on with our Becoming an Embodied Catholic Leader series, and we're still in influence. Today, we're taking a look at the Melancholic. I'll be your token Melancholic. Aaron,
Yes.
you will be the coach?
I will be the coach. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay. So what we've been doing with this series is we've been helping people to identify when they are in a zone of influence or a zone of manipulation, right? You can learn about that a little bit more in detail if you go back to some of the previous episodes. But specifically, what are those main distinctions that we draw from when somebody's in zone of influence versus manipulation?
Yeah, zone of influence, it really enhances the other's freedom. Mm-hmm. It's not coming from a place of fear, but a place of self-gift. It's kind of this implying that they are willing to receive what you have to give.
Yeah, I mean,
not forcing your gift upon them.
Like both influence and manipulation try to change somebody's thoughts, feelings, and actions. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's not necessarily that it's a bad thing in and of itself. It's how we go about doing that. Influence really honors the other person and their agency over themselves, mm-hmm. and creates space for them to make that decision to say yes to whatever it is mm-hmm. that you're proposing to them with full freedom. When I talk about agency, what I mean is like their own ability to choose what they perceive to be their greatest good. Mm-hmm. Right? Okay. And then conversely, manipulation erodes that ability, right? So they use this fear tactics predominantly.
Or control, or just really going into whatever the other person's locus of control is, like what's within their locus of control, and like manipulating it, mm-hmm. right? Like kind of changing it without the person really knowing it.
Yes.
You know, in a lot of ways. And so it's a slippery slope, and there's a lot of distinctions here, and a lot of manipulation tactics that we use have good intentions behind them. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It usually is coming from a good place, but it's colored by fear and self-protection.
Yeah.
It's covered by also like an impatience, like advice, like that kind of stuff. Like, I just wish this person would just do the thing, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
But you can have these really good intentions, and you know, we train other coaches, and so often we can see this show up even as a new coach. Like, I want this person to feel better because I want to feel better as a coach.
I want my client to have success and do the things I tell them to do, so that I can feel like I'm a good coach.
Not always, too.
Sure.
Maybe it's just they just want it for the other person.
Right.
But they can go into this kind of like rushing it and mm-hmm. running into their locus of control, trying to change and manipulate those things. So we're not like making like people who manipulate as these big scary things. It's like you're human. If you're operating out of fear and you're trying to convince or change somebody, you are operating within the zone of manipulation. And there is really good news here.
Yeah.
Because you can identify it and you can start to change it.
Yes.
And so we're going to go through...
We're going to go through those steps.
Steps.
And I love the analogy. I think this is a good point to because this has been... People have been saying that this is helpful, right? Influence, inflow, right? Like that's where it comes from.
To flow into.
To flow into. And so the influencer desires to be a gift. What they want somebody to change their thoughts, feelings, and actions because they believe that they will experience that as a gift, right? Mm-hmm. They'll experience their own dignity, whatever, their own thriving with it. Okay. So influencing, to flow into, picture a pitcher of water being poured into a glass, right?
An empty glass.
An empty glass.
That's willing to be poured into.
That's open, right? It's open to receive it, right? There's no damage that's being done, right? Mm-hmm. You just pour enough as that glass is able to receive, right? And then you stop flowing into, right? When it gets to the top of the glass, you don't pour overflowingly. You just acknowledge this is what the glass can receive at this point. And when it's topped out, it can't receive anymore. So that's an important thing. Always be acknowledged of the glass, be always acknowledge the glass that you're pouring into and what their capacities are to receive.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we also need to be aware of whether or not somebody has a lid on that glass. Okay. So if influencing is pouring into, if there's a lid on the glass, you can't pour into it. No matter how much water you dump on top of that lid, it's going to flow out the side. It's not going to be influencing. It's not going to be a good experience for people. And so if we desire to be gift, there's 3 things I like to say that is necessary for something to be a gift and remain a gift. First, you need to be in possession of the gift. The giver needs to be in possession of the gift. Second, they need to be willing to part with that gift. And then third, there needs to be an open recipient. If you remove one of those elements, it ceases to be gift, okay? And it ceases to influence.
Boom.
Cool.
All right, so the steps that we're going to take you through today, Matt, as your coach, here will be the steps.
All right.
Here will be this. I don't think that's a sentence.
The steps will be here after explained.
I'm like, there's like a Yoda statement. Here will be the. I don't know. Anyway, okay.
The holy hand grenade. Step 1.
So number 1, name the manipulation tactic that you have used recently.
A couple.
Identify the triggers, kind of what brought you into that manipulation tactic.
Okay.
And then identify where you're failing to own your own stuff and also try to like control things that are not yours. And also get curious about the fear that is driving the manipulation tactic. Like, what are we trying to protect?
Okay.
And then find a common goal of how to go ahead and influence this person. If we could start all over again, what would we do now? You know, type of thing. Okay.
Yes, I love that. And we're going to be exploring. I showed up more my melancholic. I noticed when I was doing the work preparing for this that a lot of my manipulation tactics are a little bit more coming from my dominant choleric, right? But I certainly found a few here that are on the melancholic. So I'm going to be sharing those manipulation tactics that may more commonly show up in a melancholic dominant personality type, even though it's my secondary. So just keep that in mind. You're probably going to see a little bit of bleeding over of my dominant into these scenarios. Cool.
Yeah, nice. All right, so number 1, what was your manipulation tactic?
Guilt trip. Guilt trip.
So you're guilting other people, like guilt tripping other people, I guess, as an action verb.
Yes, I want them to change their behavior and them using a guilt trip to do it.
Okay. Can you give me a recent example?
Yeah. So when it comes to dinner time, Avila not eating the food that we put in front of her.
Okay.
Kind of using the old tactic of like they're starving people in China.
Yeah. Or
your mother and I slaved over this meal. Like therefore this is the reason why you should eat it.
Okay.
Because if you don't, you're rejecting something that we're trying to do that's good for you. I want the guilt that you feel to be why you start shoveling food in your mouth.
Your impetus for that.
Yeah, and I look back at it and it's just like it's so subtle. I want my kid to eat. I want her to eat healthy food, so I can hold the space for there being a good desire here and a good intention. But the guilt trip is this. First of all, it just doesn't work on my kid.
No.
It's like
it is like on a lot of kids, I think.
Well, it triggers her. So she just doesn't. She so wants to connect.
Yeah.
And she loves to preserve the relationship. And when she sees there being a rupture, she goes inward and she closes in and kind of goes to that hiding place. And so it's like, okay, this is first of all, it's just not effective.
Yeah. But also it kind of makes
charitable too.
Yeah, and it makes you feel icky too.
Yeah,
right?
and then when she starts eating, and it's just like, okay, am I creating a complex in my kid where maybe she's not even hungry, or she really doesn't like this food, and now there's this association that I'm building in my 5-year-old of food and eating for the wrong reasons.
This is all very melancholic. What's going on here? It's called.
I'm sending my kid to the couch. I picture her.
It's called spiraling. Okay, so Avila, she doesn't eat her food.
Yeah.
And you use the guilt trip situation.
I do.
What was triggering that for you? What would be an internal trigger?
Ooh, failure.
Failure as what?
I'm failing as a parent to get my kid to eat the food that's good for them.
Okay.
No parents struggle with this. I know I'm the only one that has ever experienced this. Okay.
So you're like, internally, you're thinking, I'm failing as a parent.
Yeah. This is literally the first thing I ever coached Abby on.
Oh.
By the way, which is kind of funny. She brings it up often.
Right. Okay. So I'm failing as a parent.
Yep.
And then externally, what was like the external trigger? You kind of told us a little bit what that looks like, but.
Well, it was others not living up to my ideal. So I've got an image of
Avila not living up.
Avila, not living up to my ideal or my expectations. Others not listening. Others not listening to me. But even having to convince other people to change what they're doing is just like, I don't like the melancholic side of me. It's just so logical, and interior, it's just like, okay, like just think your way through this. Think your way to something better. And it's just, I think it's just easy for me, the melancholic side of me, to do that. Find my own motivation, find the logical reasons why. And that's even my choleric showing up there as well. And so it's just like, why can't you see it? Why can't you see that this is the right way? And it's frustrating that now I have to dedicate, here's that language, I have to dedicate convincing energy into this where I shouldn't have to do that. Again, that's like not living up to the ideal of this, or kind of like you should know better to a 5-year-old, saying that to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Right. You should know better.
What would you say is the biggest trigger here? Is it like out of all of those things?
All of those things.
There's like failure.
It's the failure and the not living up to my ideal.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, okay.
She's taking notes, folks. Taking notes.
Well, I'm going to coach you. So
what are you writing over there?
Okay, so now looking at this scenario,
she just drew a bunch of bats flying around bats in the belfry, or
I don't know what you're talking about.
It just says crazy on your paper. That's it.
Okay, so the trigger was failure as a parent, and then others not even others, but when others don't live up to your expectation, you're reminding yourself that I'm not living up to my expectation. Is
That's
that correct?
The big one. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not living up to my ideal.
Okay. And ideal looks like what?
It looks like, in this case, like the parent that has, the word trained comes to mind, but the parent that has like formed my kid in healthy habits of eating, and like
never saying no
by the age of 5, having done this.
Wow. Yeah. Can we hire those people? Do you exist? Anyway, okay, so
in my head they do.
Yes, in your head you are that. Apparently.
In your head.
All right. Yep. So, what are you giving that is yours over to Avila?
What am I giving that is mine over
to a 5-year-old?
What am I surrendering that's in my locus of control to a 5-year-old? Certainly my expectations of success, my emotions. That's a big thing, because right now my emotions, whether or not I feel successful or I feel like a failure, have everything to do with her actions on whether or not she eats the food or not. So it's just like that. I'm really trying to control her action, eating the food. And ideally, I want her to eat the food and like it. I'm kind of getting over into me grasping at what's in control of what's hers here already. But yeah, the emotions, the frustration that I feel, I'm surrendering my own ability to come up with a plan of how to engage this in a way that's virtuous. Even like my ability to ask some questions. What's going on? Why don't you want this? Or even my ability to create some healthy boundaries here as well, or communicate my expectations or the reasons why.
Yeah. What are healthy boundaries?
So healthy boundaries could be like, okay, this is the food that we have. You can choose to eat it or not to eat it, but this is the food that we have to eat right now.
Okay.
And she gets to choose whether or not she eats it, and me not making it a big deal if she chooses not to eat it. And there's this fear that my kid's going to starve, and they don't. They won't starve. They won't starve. But that's an example of just saying, hey, like, you don't get to choose what we put on the plate, but you do get to choose whether or not you eat what's on the plate in front of you.
Okay.
I also get to choose whether or not I am going to
change it,
die on that hill, or offer another option that is, healthy and works.
I wonder if even just using the word boundaries is helpful. I hear that and I'm like, those are more conditions. Well, these are the conditions that we've set.
Okay. So yeah, like conditions. I do like to have, an expectation that I can share and I can fall back on.
Yeah.
And it's appropriate. It's honoring my authority as her father, and also like the agency of where she's at, like in her ability as a 5-year-old to make good decisions on what to eat.
Right. I just boundaries kind of imply that somebody's taking advantage. Like that's kind of.
That's what you get. Okay. So
like they've crossed a boundary.
Okay. All right. And and for me personally, that's not how I'm receiving it.
Okay.
But I can see your point.
Yeah. I think it just conditions.
It's not like a scary word for me, or like a, I have to, like, it's protective.
All right. Got it. Okay. So what are you trying to make yours that is not?
Her appetite, her actions of eating the food that's in front of her, whether or not she complains or whines, or how she responds to the expectations that we set,
and what she desires to eat.
What she desires, yeah, like her particular taste. She's got a little bit of a like the event specifically is coming up. Like, I know she eats chicken. She eats shredded chicken. And so we got a rotisserie chicken, which in my mind, I look at these things like, it's the best. This is the best. Like, this is shredded chicken that is like super tasty and delicious. And I put it in front of her, and she's eaten it before, but she's not having it tonight. And it's just like, and there's all kinds of thoughts that start going here. It's like, oh, here we go. Like, and it's like, and so I'm trying to convince her, no, you've had this before and you like it. Right. And she just wasn't having it. And finally, when I got curious about it, and I asked her, I was just like, what is the problem with it? And she goes, it's smushy. And so it's like,
texture.
Okay, all right, there's a texture thing going on. And if any of you parents out there have kids that are texture sensitive, I don't know if that's what it's called.
It's a real thing.
But it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Like, I know I have a nephew that wouldn't touch the bottom of a pool until he was like 4. He just didn't like the feeling of it or something. It's just weird. I wouldn't eat buttons. That was my fear, my phobia. that just happened. All right, so I was afraid of buttons when I was a kid. Let's just get it out there. I'm wearing buttons now. I'm over it, okay? So I was afraid of buttons.
Why? Why were you afraid?
I don't know. There was this thought that was coming in my head that I was going to have to eat them someday. I really didn't like the marble ones. The ones that were multi-tone.
You told me this before. It's like you had to put you'd have to eat them in a big bowl with butter or something.
The ones
like noodles.
And I was so happy.
To find out that you didn't have to?
To find out there was when we went to Ruth and Paul's house, one of their kids had a button phobia too.
That's right.
I was like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen. I'm not the only one with this crazy button phobia.
So funny.
I got over it, but I wore turtlenecks for the first 3 or 4 years of my life.
Yes.
Anyways.
We digress, but there you go. You're welcome.
There. It's out there now.
You're welcome, everyone.
Cool.
So
buttons. Who's got the buttons?
All right. So can we just go back? I do want to coach you a little bit on this thought.
The buttons?
No.
Okay.
I've failed or I'm not up to my expectations.
Yeah. Okay.
So what's going on there when you think that thought? I'm not living up to my expectations. How do you feel?
I feel ashamed. I feel ashamed.
So, yeah. Okay. So, and then what do you do? I mean, we kind of know what you do.
Well, in this case, it's just like the guilt tripping is like the tactic that I use, but it's all trying to get her to start eating the food that's in front of her. And it's just without honoring, like resisting the reality that she does get to choose. Like, that's not in my authority. Like, it's no, there's a way that I can I can bypass this, or I can convince her, and my actions are, and then I get to feel like I've done my job when she starts eating.
So that's what success looks like. It's like, I've done my job correctly, and you have this ideal in your head. Because I think we could arguably say that this manipulation tactic is protecting you from feeling shame.
Feeling shame is apparent here.
Okay.
But also, like, the ideal is she actually wants to eat the good food, and she's choosing of her own free will to eat the food.
Yeah.
So I'm actually settling for something less than that ideal.
Yeah.
Like when I go into the manipulation, it's like the ideal becomes she just does the action.
You're settling for it because the pain of the shame that's being created by this thought, I'm not living up to my own ideals and expectations. Like, that's too painful for you. So, like, I will settle for her just acting like this, right? So that I don't have to look at this thought
and
in myself.
Yeah. And I can see the achiever in me also, like, wanting this to be done now.
Can I just, I want to talk about this thought, because it's like, all right. And it's probably a really common thought that a lot of melancholics have. I am not living up to my own expectations or my own ideals. Define, like, is this for every scenario of your life? Or is this does this show up a lot with just parenting? Like,
no, this not living up to the ideal is like, it's one of my main exiled parts. I would say that it comes back to a ton. The golden child, guy that's got to have it all together.
And he's the ideal, the golden child.
The golden child is the one that has it all together, doesn't need anybody else, has it all together.
Can you define to me what ideal is? When you say I'm living up to this ideal, and we can just use this particular situation as like a
it's
parent.
like living up to the ideal is like I am being that parent that is reasonable, that can enter into like what my kid is going through and stay connected while at the same time like helping my kid to make good decisions.
Okay. So the ideal is actually influencing, like being in the zone of influence.
Yeah.
So you're reasonable, entering into a relationship or a connection.
Yeah.
Understanding. Okay. And that's really good for you to know. So next time this comes in, you go, what is the ideal? Next time you feel that shame, that's the indicator that this is what's behind it. Like, I'm not living up to my ideal. Okay. So Matt, you're cognitive, you're logical, you're melancholic. In that way you could go, what is the ideal in this situation?
And grounded in like the ideal being influence.
Is it just behavior change in my daughter so that I can kind of get that dopamine hit and feel like I'm a good, or is it being reasonable, sitting down with her, connecting with her, understanding?
Yeah. And like doing it with like at the same time honoring the fact that she's not 16 years old with
of course
a well-formed, like a more formed reason. So I don't know if I can sit
how
down
does
and really
she get
have
there?
A reason. Right.
Right. Like, how does she actually get to that formed place? Is somebody teaching her how to do that?
Yeah.
And going through the process with her.
Yeah. Like, I'm probably not going to use a tactic of, okay, well, you have to have a no thank you bite with a 16-year-old, but I might use that with a 5-year-old.
Yeah. So next time this happens, or as we're going into it, like moving forward, you have that golden child, that kind of like, I would say a counterfeit faux ideal.
Yes.
We just know that doesn't work.
Yeah. Golden child never really helps me enter into relationship too.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to stay connected here as well. That's part of the ideal.
Yeah. And then the ideal in this scenario in parenting looks like what? Tell me again. We're just going to review.
The ideal is that I'm able to stay in the zone of influence.
Yeah.
And it's a formative process. It doesn't have to, like, part of my ideal in my head, which I think is which I think is also not helping, is like she has to be formed now at 5.
Yeah.
Like it's got to be fully baked.
And so do you.
And yeah, as a parent.
Yeah.
Right. And if that's not the case, then that equals bad. And so it's like I'm not even honoring the way that a human being learns things over time or is formed in relationship. I'm not honoring the way that a 5-year-old's formed. And I'm not honoring the way that a 40-year-old is formed.
Yeah, it continues. Well. I love this new thought for you. We are both being formed by this right now.
Well, yeah, that's like, I remember Leo Darrow saying, like, you're entering an opportunity for charity. Marie Montessori, like, you're being schooled in the school of the apostolate of the child right now. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like that permission to just continue being formed, I think it's just such a human thing. It's how I coach people also.
Yeah.
And counsel people
with
this. Yeah.
So now when that ideal comes to mind, it's like, what picture comes to mind besides the golden child? What's another optional picture?
Of just like, I mean, I'm going to a thought, and the first thought I want to go to is like, this is not where the battle's going to be won or lost right here. And I know it's like, even going into it like it's a battle, it maybe not be the best, but like just not having all the weight of her future eating habits poured into that one moment at the table, but rather seeing it as like, okay, this is just one opportunity and of many opportunities, and we're gonna stay in the zone of influence, because here's the reality, guys. Like, the zone of influence is the quickest and surest way to actually accomplish the goal of changing somebody else's thoughts, feelings, and actions, right? Where they freely choose to do it.
So it's just a lot less angsty.
Yeah.
on everybody's part.
But it also, like, I think of like it's the way of being able to form good associations in a young kid. And it also is like, we're not creating this situation where as soon as I am removed as the authority figure, she just goes and she's over at a friend's house. She just eats nothing but like French fries.
It happened to me. All right. So the visual that came to me was a student.
Okay. And I like that. Like, the learner in me desires that.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, we're both being formed. Like you kind of get your notepad and you're like, okay. Yeah. You know, you're just taking note of like, what's my interior resistance to this right now? What's hers? I want to understand what's getting in the way here. Like, we're both in the school of human formation right now. Yeah. You know? Yep. I like that. But so you could go golden child or student. Which one do I like better? Which one feels way better, a lot because, like, less heavy?
Well, the golden child is just like, it's like an ideal that I'll never meet. Like, like the golden child is omniscient, all knowing, omnipotent, all powerful.
I'd love to meet this golden child. I'm just kidding. Okay, so how could you, like, what's some contributions? Well, how could you better love and allow this student part of you to come out more? I think that's.
Well, it's
like, how can we allow him to come out more? That student part.
I think there's, I don't know. Like, can you ask that a different way? Like, how do I allow the student to come out a little bit more? But first of all, just I'd say, make it okay to not know. Like, that's like the whole, it's like, the not knowing equals bad. Like, let's explore how not knowing is actually appropriate. Right. Or, there's nothing, or normal.
Because there was that piece where you were like, I need to know this now. I need to be formed now. She needs to be formed now. And it's like, okay, but no, this is like a part of it. This is the
it's
part.
Like giving myself permission to be a parent who's learning.
Yes.
Right. That's like the first part. And then and when it comes to like now sitting down and from that place, collaborating with Avila or even with you here to create a common goal together of what dinner time's going to look like or like eating is going to look like. Maybe there's a point where we start to involve her a little bit more, and we do this from time to time, like in choosing what she's going to have for dinner here. And I know there's some, and like even right now, there's schools of thought where it's just like, no, you don't make individual meals for people. And it's just like, well, okay, well, we have one kid.
That's not ideal for us. For our family.
It's not an ideal environment for us. But,
yeah.
But I kind of like it.
Yeah, there you go.
I don't know.
Right. Like we're just constantly learning. We're learning what works and what doesn't work, and for our environment, for our particular family. Okay, so what contributions could you lean into next time this happens? If we know what ideal looks like now?
Yeah, well, it's even just the contribution of being able to get a clear picture of success, being curious about the other person, listening well myself.
Yeah.
I mean, these are strong, like being able to connect on a deep level with somebody. I could lean into those contributions.
Yeah, and empathy too.
Yeah.
Like,
I know you're kind of like sucking back because you're like, I know empathy is in your bottom 5 as a strengths finder.
But also, I think that's always shocking to me when I hear that, because I think you can really relate to people and being in there.
I can do it when I'm intentional with it, and it's just not necessarily where I habitually go. But I think I can certainly be empathetic.
Yeah. Yep. And also lean into your desire to learn, like you're a learner, kind of your natural learner.
Yes.
All right. There's number 1. So number 2, let's get through this.
It might be a little similar.
Yeah. Okay, that's all right. It was your second manipulation tactic or tendency?
I have a lot of ideals around the dinner table. Okay, so, but this one is manuals, right? And when you talk about manuals, there are unspoken expectations that you have, but you still hold people up to those expectations. Even though you've never communicated it, you still hold them up to that. And when they don't meet those expectations, you have all kinds of penalties that you start enforcing.
Okay.
On those. Okay, so... situation with this.
Okay.
We were sitting down for dinner, or at least in the process of sitting down for dinner, and I had this image in my head of what dinner was going to look like that night. It was going to be all of us sitting down, and everybody's enjoying their meal. Nobody's complaining. Nobody wants to get up from the table after 2 minutes and do something else. Everybody wants to talk about the things that I want to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about work.
Who?
Avila always wants to talk about work at the dinner table. But it was just like I had this picture in my mind, this manual of what dinner was going to look like. And we had put Avila's food down in front of her while we were still dishing up our stuff. And by the time you and I sat down, she was done. And she was ready to move on. And you were ready to let her move on. Because it was just like, okay, then we can have an adult conversation. Or she can kind of just run some energy off before she jumps in the bathtub. Okay. So that's the situation.
Okay. So you had this manual. And can you just describe to me? You kind of did. But like in one sentence, what was your manual? Like dinner looks like blah.
Yeah, like we're going to have a good old-fashioned family freaking dinner.
That's and everyone's going to love it, dang it.
I had this image of like the Waltons and John Boy and just kind of like...
Okay.
Aaron with a apron on.
That's all right. You just need to buy me an apron. I would use it, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, totally use it.
Cool.
Okay, so what triggered
whimsical slogan on it.
What triggered you into that manipulation tactic, that manual?
What triggered? Okay, so like people not living up to the expectation
again,
but also me not living up to the expectation, not living up to the ideal.
What was the thought?
Oh gosh, we're doing it wrong.
We are doing it. I see.
Like,
I see what just happened there.
Is there a frog in your pocket?
Yeah.
Who's we?
Yeah. And then, so people not living up to your ideal, we are doing it wrong. We're doing it. What, dinner time? What is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing dinner time wrong.
Okay.
You all right?
According to who?
According to the book of Matthew.
Oh my gosh. Okay. According to
How you doing, babe?
Oh, I'm fine.
How's that space?
Oh, I'm totally fine.
Nice and
I'm
held.
joking.
Got
here.
it. All right.
So wrong is like there's this dinner rule book.
Yeah, no, it's not a rule book. It's a dinner expectation.
Also rule book. It's the same thing. And it looks like this. Okay, so
yes.
what are you giving over to someone else that is not theirs? Like, what are you abdicating? To the we.
Well, certainly my emotional responsibility here. So like whether or not I feel like I've failed or there's the shame or is contingent on somebody living up to this expectation. I'm giving up my responsibility of communicating the expectation. That's like a big one. Like,
yeah, I was going to say, like, you're giving your expectation over
part of this,
but not communicating.
And how often has this shown up in so many areas of our marriage, Aaron? And Melancholics out there, like, just comment below if this resonates.
Melancholics unite.
Like, if where I have an expectation and I don't communicate it because I really want you to figure it out on your own and for you to just be so connected to me that you know without me having to ask. Like, that's part of the ideal.
Okay.
Like, so it's like you don't ask me what I want for Christmas because you know me so well that you can answer a question that frankly I can't even answer myself.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I don't know.
So you place those ideals onto somebody else.
Yeah.
Too, and that,
well, yes.
And then you expect them.
And I think this is something that there's something good here because there is a person that does know all of those things, but it's not your wife. It's not your spouse. It's not your kids. It's not your best friend.
Jesus.
And yeah, that's a Jesus question. That is like, there's something I think that, and I'm learning to just hold the space for that desire a little bit more.
Yep.
But also, and bring it to the Lord first. And then also, I think I'm getting better at communicating some of these things with you and being like, okay, this is like, I'd love for you to be able to, do this without me having to ask for it, but just knowing that it's something that I desire. And that's been helpful for you.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's no longer a manual at that point. It's no longer unspoken. It's still an expectation, right? So cool. And operating in the zone of influence, we can make requests in the zone of influence.
So what are you trying to make yours that is not yours?
Oh, the expectation. Everybody else's expectation for what a good dinner looks like.
So you're like, let me decide for everyone. Is that what you're saying?
Don't say it like that. I see what you're doing. Don't say it like that.
I'm trying to keep this light, right? Like, oh, I know what you guys want. I don't even know what I want. Guess what I want for Christmas, but I know what you guys want.
I don't sound like that. Anyways.
It would actually probably make things a little bit easier in your head if this voice sounded like that. Because you'd be like, man, that's annoying,
Okay. All right. Maybe.
So what? Okay, but what is it like? Let's go back to this. What are you trying to make yours that's not yours?
It's. I want everybody's image of what a good dinner looks like.
Okay.
And that they want. I want them to want that.
Okay.
I want it to conform to the image that I already have in my head that I'm not. That is unspoken.
Okay. Well, I think as we're going through this, you have a lot of self-awareness around this, and you're taking steps to communicate these things.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, for sure. What's something, how would you address this manual? All right, no, I'm the coach, so I'm going to address this manual.
Okay.
So the manual is they should blank. What is it? It's they should want dinner to look exactly like this.
They should share this expectation.
They should share this expectation.
Like a good dinner.
Okay. Okay. And when they don't, how does that feel?
Frustrating.
Yeah.
Frustrating.
Yeah, and it's not because they don't. It's because you're holding on to this thought that they should.
Yeah, they're frustrating and disappointed.
Yeah.
That's kind of it too. Like I've got an expectation, we are not meeting it.
And this is where disappointment comes from. And I think this is a really good pause here. Disappointment comes from ideal and reality. Mm-hmm. You know?
And the difference, the delta between
That's
the two.
Right. Yeah. That's right. And it's like, if this is
for
like
people that
really,
can't see their hands right now.
If this is like really separate, these two, you know, there's like a lot of disappointment. If it's just a little bit, it's like, oh, maybe my manuals are working or something like that, right? Like there's kind of that thought. So, and when we hang on to that ideal, and maybe we don't really look deeper, like what you were saying, like there is a deeper reason for this ideal, and it's to be united with the Lord. Like He can fulfill these expectations of mine. He places these desires within me to fulfill them. And it's a harsh reminder of reality when other people can't.
Sure.
And so it's almost like maybe we don't drop the ideals, but we just go deeper with them.
Okay. Yeah. Lean into them a little bit more.
Yeah. Be like, what's at the root of this? What Lord, you've placed this in here, and my trying to figure this out myself, trying to fulfill this need and this ideal and like meet this ideal myself has not worked.
Yeah. And well, I can tell you the fear, we can kind of move on here. And like the fear is like, I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing parenting wrong. I'm missing a mark. I'm like, and here's where the melancholic spin cycling goes. It's like, I'm doing it wrong. I'm failing. I knew this was something that like, other people are watching. Other people are seeing me failing. Other people are judging me. I'm judging myself.
Now pause. Knowing that we have a good Father and a good God who is like, I place all these ideals within you, this desire to fulfill these ideals. How is that an amazing thing? All those things that you just said. I'm feeling I'm doing it wrong. How is that amazing?
How is that good? How is that amazing? Well, I like having an ideal. I like having something that I'm working towards, that I'm striving for. And because I think God is an ideal. I think heaven is an ideal. I mean, it's like high above our thoughts. Like I can't fully conceive it, but I know that we were made for an ideal.
Yeah. The image that's coming to mind is like, in one, you're in isolation. In another, you're in relationship.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
So this is like, what I mean. It's like, okay, I'm not doing it right. Immediately, if you know you're in relationship with omnipotence himself, right? What do? You turn to him.
Show me the way. Yeah. Like, fix this. What's going on? Yeah.
Oh, so good for me to know right now that I'm not doing it right.
Yeah.
That I can come to you and fix this so I don't keep trying to do it right on my own over here. Yeah.
And then there's the golden child. Again, aspect of the golden child doesn't want to be in a relationship, wants to have it all figured out on his own.
Yeah, it's an idol.
I mean, it is. It literally is like wanting to be my own God.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love this as being like, hey, your ideals are not bad. They just can't be filled here on earth.
Or they can't be filled outside of a relationship with God. Like,
right. That's what yes. Right.
Like I don't think
the answer is not here.
Yeah. I don't think it's impossible. It's for my kid to have good, healthy eating habits. Like, I don't think that's like an ideal that only exists on the other side of heaven. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But when these things keep coming back, and I think this is a good teaching moment, when these things keep coming back, like their continual belief systems, it for me as a coach, it like actually implies that there's something greater underneath all of this. There's a deep, deep, deep well and a desire to fill this ideal, right? Like we can look at these like different circumstances and be like, okay, yeah, we could probably help Avila eat better for sure. Right. And we can fulfill that ideal. But when there's that ache, that consistent ache underneath it, it's like the Lord's going, let me touch that. Let me into that place.
Okay.
And so just looking at the habits of continuing coming back to that, he wants to fill that.
Okay.
And it can only be filled in relationship with him.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, you're saying ideal does not automatically equal bad, or the
Correct.
ideal is the problem.
Correct.
Okay. It's like
it's the means of where you're going.
The ideal, and my perspective on not meeting the ideal right now in this moment is what's causing a lot of the manipulation tactics, the fear, the shame that's showing up there, rather than it's just like, no, just like maintain the ideal, but also like maintain it for what it is. And like, no, it's your journeying towards that. And the expectation that you're going to arrive at the ideal on this side of heaven is
through but also
disappointing.
Also, the way of fulfilling that ideal is through relationship with the Lord. Sure. Like that's it.
Sure. Okay.
And that's who you go to first.
I can do that.
Awesome. Okay. So what are some contributions you can lean into there?
Contributions to like create specifically those,
like if we were to face this again,
the common good.
We're coming to sit down for dinner again. And it's like, what do we do?
Well, I mean, what I'd love to do is like, and we've done this in the past, and then we said that we were going to take an opportunity to revisit this because things change and taste buds change apparently. And, so I would love to collaborate with you on a vision for what dinner looks like. And maybe, I loved this family that I knew at the Naval Academy that had 10 kids. They had a huge table that sat all 12 of the family members, and they would have a Saturday night dinner, and they could always bring their friends over. But they preserved that space. It was just a very sacred space, and that Saturday night between 6 and 7:30 was family dinner time. And there were no sports, there were no leaving. Everybody was there, and they did a Lord's Day. And that, in my mind, was like an ideal. I remember it was such an ideal that I bought my sister and brother-in-law a Lord's Day kit for their on their wedding day, for their wedding. So, like, but being able to surrender that ideal over to you. And just offering that, knowing that I can't create that ideal by myself. Like I can't create that image. There needs to be buy-in and consensus, definitely with you.
So speak it out loud and ask for it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and not be ashamed to admit it. Like sometimes there's a shame, even like because the ideal is not necessarily perfect yet, and it's like, no, I got to wait and perfect this, and it's fun to just without. Wait, why are you laughing?
I just think it's funny because it's like ideal is like perfectionism. Like it's just like ongoing. It's like I need to perfect this ideal. I need to perfect the perfect.
Before I can communicate it. I need to do
such a melancholic statement. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if that was helpful or not, but
it was super helpful. No, this is good. So you're all invited over for dinner.
Yay.
It's going to be perfect. It's going to be a perfect dinner party.
We're going to do Lord's Day.
Apparently.
So, but yeah, guys, this is work to do. This is good work to do. Continually just asking yourself like those desires go deeper, because we manipulate when we're trying to protect ourselves from going deeper, because we're afraid that God won't show up. And so we highly recommend you do this work. I mean, we've kind of given you a structure, so go try this out.
Yeah. And again, that structure is like, first, just name the manipulation tactic. And then the second part is just get specific, like on what was going on in that circumstance. You're identifying the triggers that are showing up, and the triggers that we use. We've got our own temperaments assessment workshop. We go to the triggers that are there that are dominant for your particular dominant or secondary temperament that might be showing up. So that's a great resource. And we're going to be offering that on a regular basis in the future in our academy. So that's going to be a great place where you can get exposure to that. But certainly we have people that are equipped to deliver those workshops now. I just got done doing it for a parish. It was amazing. So much fun. So identify the triggers, and then we do the locus of control work. What are we grasping at that's in somebody else's locus of control, and what are we abdicating that's in our locus of control? We're not stewarding it well.
And then what are you protecting?
Yeah, get curious. What's the fear? What are you protecting? But like, there's also something that's important to love that part of yourself.
Yep.
There, not say it's all bad. Right.
You'll allow it, yeah.
Just acknowledge the ideal, perhaps in this case, that is good, but still something that's good. We surrender it to the Lord, and then finally, The foundation of a loving relationship or an influential relationship is when both people, two or more people in a relationship, choose the same common good.
Freely.
And they freely choose it, and they will it freely together. So that's the ideal.
Boom.
Cool.
All right. See you guys next week.
Phlegmatics.
We're going to be doing phlegmatics next week. I will be the model phlegmatic.
She is a model phlegmatic. All right, and we're plugging again. Become who you are. Become who you are. May 7th through 10th, 2024 in Fort Lauderdale. It's going to be our first in-person event, and we are going to be diving deep into this temperaments work. You're going to walk away knowing thyself much more, but also equipped as a temperaments mentor to accompany other people to do this work as well. It's amazing, awesome. Amazing work. We want to see it happening in all the parishes selfishly, but also unselfishly. It's so cool to see people finally recognize why they are the way that they are. Mm-hmm. And that's not a bad thing, but something that God has designed with a purpose.
Boom.
Cool.
See you guys there.
See you guys. Hey, thanks for sticking with us in the Catholic Coaching Podcast. If you like what you heard,
please like and subscribe, and we'll see you again.